acknowledge that we live, work, and learn on the traditional territory of the Washoe people, and it is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside in this land. We also need to protect and honor the history of these people in this place. My name is Molly Allen. I'm the SNU Gallery Director. So the structure for tonight is going to be the same as last week, but as a refresher, tonight we're looking at two exhibitions. So we start here, 5:30. Nikki's going to give a talk, and then directly after this, we're going to move to the HVAC show on the first floor of the Homeland Hammer building in the garage of our gallery. It's really important to come with us and do that. We're going to give about 30 minutes in Gabe's exhibition to view that, and then we're going to go upstairs to the second floor to listen to his artist talk. So please stick around. Gabe is working really hard on the show. And it is just a short walk, an even shorter drive over there. So now I'm going to introduce Nikki. Nikki Sardelli grew up in Killington, Vermont. She works in sculpture using natural materials and clay as her main medium. Nikki tries to instill a sense of wonder she finds in experiencing everyday life onto her viewers. Sticks and Stones is an exhibition exploring the interconnection between human and nature. And now I'll turn it over to Nikki.
Well, thank you everyone for showing up. This is the biggest thing I've ever done, so yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. I'm super excited to have you guys all here and show you what I've been working on since last spring, really. I'd like to reaffirm what Molly said about us being on Washoe tribe land. I take that very seriously, and I'd like to think about the fact that this is the place where I learned so much about myself, and also learned how to be an artist, learned how to be a writer, learned how to do the things I'm doing now. So that's really cool to me, and I'm very thankful for that. So getting into my BFA show. So I titled the show Sticks and Stones, not only because literally there's a bunch of sticks and stones in that gallery right now, but also because I think of that saying little kids say to each other when they might get bullied or something, where they say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And when I was working on this show, it was very emotional for me. There was a lot of personal self that was going into those pieces, and it was very vulnerable to me. So not only is it about these natural materials, but it's also about me and my identity as a human being in this world. So without further ado, I grew up in Vermont. Didn't have a lot of friends around me. Everybody was really spread out. So I would spend a lot of my pastime in the woods. When I would go in the woods, I'd come up with little stories and adventures. And I would have these favorite trees, favorite spots that meant a lot to me, because there was just characteristics to them that felt familiar to me, and were in a sense my friends. And when I would feel sad, when I was feeling lonely, having hard times, I would go into the woods, and it was always a home, a dwelling place for me, being in nature, being a part of it. I didn't need other people around me to feel safe and comfortable, because I had the woods, and I could climb my favorite tree and feel happy because I was climbing that tree. When I came to SNU, previously SNC, I was actually a creative writing major, and I'm still an avid writer. I love writing just as much as I love art, but I ended up switching over to art because I was lacking or needing some kind of creative outlet, and I can't put my finger on exactly what was missing, but I just I needed to construct with my hands. I had always loved both, and I needed both in my life at that time. So I switched over to art, and I'm so happy I did. But during my junior year, we had our midway art portfolio reviews, and so pretty much what that is a mini version of this to prepare ourselves for our actual talk. And I came up with these sticks that I collected from the beach down in Incline, and it's just driftwood, but I felt this need to alter it to construct with it. And at the time, I didn't completely know what was going on with that. I was curious about the material. I felt connected to it because I spent so much time gazing at the lake, feeling emotions running through me as I looked at the lake. And it felt important to work with it, but I can't say that I knew exactly where that was going as I was making with it. I used paper mache, string. I would use some of the wolf moss from the woods around here. And it was really just about altering and interacting with nature, copying nature in a sense. And, just experiencing it alongside of me when I was working with it. Here's another picture from my mapper. I constructed these, I called them boulders at the time, out of ceramics, and then I glazed them, and I put this fur that I collected from the thrift store. It used to be a little pillow, and I was like, oh, I can turn it into something. But it was a real animal fur that I took and then pushed into this ceramics. And when I made this, it made me think about like a bear's butt just hanging out of a cave or something. And I don't know why, but that was really exciting for me at the time. I thought that was a cool idea, this little creature in this rock or something. And yeah, I just went off with it. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And this was another piece from that time period where I was interweaving these different yarns and textures and fake furs. And I was reading a lot of Greek mythology and stories at the time, and I remember seeing this one thing about the three fates, and pretty much they're pictured as these three old women weaving away, and what they're weaving is people's destinies as they're born, and that to me was so cool. I was like, yeah, I'm weaving people's destinies into these little tapestry type things. And yeah, it went into that, and it was the beginning of everything that I've been creating now in this gallery. And I just like to put all these photos because this was really the raw start of what is happening now with my art. So when I was really starting into this semester, I was really stressed out about the idea of trying to put context to art history. Art history was not my favorite class by any means, but I worked through it. But I do remember I've learned about the Romantic era both in my creative writing classes and my art history class, so it was this one period that I felt connected to through both my writing and my art. And the Romantic era, if you don't know anything about it, it was the time period at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution when we were inventing things that were new to us as humanity. And instead of everything in the art world becoming a part of the mechanics and the factories and these new inventions, people instead almost revolted against that and went back to this time period of nature and appreciating the world beyond all these inventions that we had been creating. And with that, everything became very honest to emotion, rich in identity, and something beyond just nature as a landscape, but something that was a part of us too. And in like art history, we call that the sublime, where we have this wonder and power in nature that is beyond the physical elements of it, but something that is powerful and almost religious in a sense, where like we're so tied to it and emotionally inclined towards it that it has a force to it. And you see that in a lot of the paintings and stuff from that time, that it's moody. There's drama in it. These are some like classic images from that time where like you're looking out into this almost like voidscape, and there's so much mystical elements to it and the unknown and emotional identity in these pictures. And when I was like thinking about the work that's in the gallery, it didn't completely add up with this because I was obsessing over the work visually. I was thinking about the work as something visual instead of emotionally. So everything looked like something I couldn't find in art history because there aren't that many people working with natural material, with sticks and moss and all these things. And it was really frustrating me. And then I realized that it is not about the physical material and how it looks, but the conceptual parts of it. And the thing with that is like, I was emotionally somewhere in the romantic era where I was thinking about like we're living in this world that is scientific, that has machines, that has factories, that has all these things, but I still feel somehow tied into nature, into the woods, and like that's the place I want to be. So I had this moment of like aha, where I was like, oh yeah, like that's really what I'm thinking about, is my emotional ties to nature and how I am in that place. I'm gonna give you guys one of my quotes from my journals. I write a lot and I have so many journals in my house. So I would just like to read one of the quotes from it. It says, "I think there is power in places where elements converge, the gentle lapping as the sand and lake embrace, two things inherently different, becoming one in form." When I started going to this school, I spent a lot of time at the lake whenever I was emotionally stricken or was having trouble with like something. Like the lake was my place of solitude, my place where I felt those emotions like lapping off of me, like as the waves are lapping as well. And I think that when I look at my pieces, I am not only seeing the natural material that I collect, but I'm also seeing my identity merge with those material. I am adapting the material into myself, and it is becoming a collaboration of sorts. So one of my artists that really inspires me is Christina Bothwell. She actually went to school for painting, but she ended up like self-teaching herself ceramics and glasswork. And what I love about her work is there's an ethereal, mystical feeling to it. When you look at it, you can see that there is something beyond the physical body happening with it. There's this figure, but there's also the things in between, and I love how there is contrast between like the solidity of the ceramics versus this glass that is clear and showing through to something beyond the physical body. I'd like to read one of her quotes that says, "I think of these pieces as souls, each being pregnant with their own potential, giving birth to new, improved versions of themselves." And when I was working on the show in the gallery, I was really thinking about, like, I'm collecting these pieces of wood, these stones, like all these things from nature, but I'm altering them into something that is beyond what they are now. And I'm not completely sure what they have been altered into, but like I feel that there's power in that alteration, and that something has come from it that is different from what it was before. Another artist I really appreciate is Dion. He has a lot of work that is talking about the environment, being aware of the impact we have on the environment at this time. So he has a lot of pieces talking about our connectedness to the environment, that we are also scientifically animals, and playing with the idea that we as a whole, as humans, have an interaction, that we are a part of, we are the cogs in this wheel of nature. We are not separate from it. There's like no boundary to that. And he talks a lot about this idea that the media, that science museums, that all these things determine what is nature to us, and we cannot think other than what these things in our society, this media, is telling us. And instead of being introspective and looking at ourselves as like emotional beings in the environment that we live in, we're seeing the environment as something separate, something that we need to take care of, instead of something that is a part of us. I'd like to read one of his quotes that says, "I have always been keen to explore the little lies that we tell ourselves, to help mask the fact that we are animals and therefore intimately connected to nature. The denial of death hides the interconnectedness of things. Death, health, aging, defecation, sex, and eating are all parts of our animal lives, which we cocoon with complex cultures of taboo and avoidance." That quote really hit me because it, thank you. It really like sprung on me, that like idea that like me working with this material, working with all of these things that don't have any material value, it doesn't matter, because like they're a part of me and they're as important as I am. This is another piece from him called The Witch Cupboard. And I really I have a few spell jars and things in that gallery under the mushroom that is in there that I did collect from my backyard. I watched it grow, and then I cultivated it when it started like aging and getting cracks in it that seemed like I should cut it down. It was sad to cut it though, I have to say. But I really like this witch cupboard, because when you're thinking about these like cabinets of curiosity, the material that is collected in them, the items that are put in these things, is so up to the artist, the collector, and there aren't any two that are similar, because whoever collects these items like chooses everything that goes into them, so it's so innately the person that creates them, and I think that's really cool. I'm an avid collector of anything that I find in the woods or like by the beach that I'm like, wow, that's a cool little piece of nature. So it excites me a lot thinking about collecting material and then seeing another artist's identity, their perception of beauty in the world based off of what they collect. Here's two pieces of mine that are in the gallery. On the right side is some of my jars that I collected things in one of the pieces in the bottom, the pink one, is actually my hair from a year ago. It has been colored differently since then, but I really like taking this snapshot in time of what I looked like, who I was at that time, choosing to dye my hair that color. And I've been using wax and string a lot, not only the string to connect things, to speak on this idea of connectedness, of fate, of all these things, but also to preserve. When I think of like cocoons or chrysalises, I think about the idea of wrapping, of sealing, and preserving some kind of memory and something. So I became very fascinated with this idea of using string to wrap and wax to seal and enclose some kind of memory within something. Here's another picture of my show, where I started over the summer making these sticks that I collected out in the woods, and then I would take clay, like if you don't know what polymer clay is, it's like a form of like oven baked clay where you can like twist it and alter it a little easier than ceramics. I enjoyed both, but it was fun playing with the different types of clay. And I would look at these pieces and then think to myself, like, okay, they have these like gnarled or like twisted attributes that are different from the other pieces in the woods. And I would be like, okay, like what should I do with them? Like I should accentuate that, or like if they had like holes in them or something, I would try to poke more holes into them so it like spoke to that form that they had already created on their own. And I found in like doing this that my sense of beauty, my ego was merging with this beautiful thing that was already created in nature. And like not only was I collecting something that somehow reflected back to me what was important in the environment, but I was taking it and altering it and putting part of myself in it. And then when I would put strings around them, when I would put wax around them, it felt like I was mummifying into it the memory of what it had been, and then also altering it to be a part of me in that moment that I had created it. It was a sort of meditation of sorts, where I could see like where I was at that moment when I was making it. And I can't say that like I have a favorite, because I made them when I was having a bad time, I made them when I was happy, and they all like speak of different languages to me, and that emotional context to them is what makes them beautiful to me. Here's another piece. This is made out of ceramic. And I didn't know what this was going to be at first. I was actually comparing it to the piece made out of bark that is also kind of a blob shape that is in there by the window. And when I started making it, it just like, I don't know, something about it said like fur, antlers, like creature. I can't put my finger on it, but I was picturing some kind of slug with like antlers or something. And it started making me think about what it means to like have a pet, means to be an animal, how bizarre it is that we have pets and are also animals. So I put a chain on it. I put this leash on it and tied it to the wall because I was just thinking about that, like, discomfort of, like, we're treating these other animals as lesser than us and perceiving them as pets, and how I think in a sense we're also perceiving the part of us that is animal, that is natural, as something lesser than who we are as, like, humans. And I don't know what caused that in society, but I think it is important to acknowledge that, like, the animal parts of us are making us react and feel things, like, in our daily lives as much as the parts of us that feel human, established in this society that we, like, live in today. Here's another piece I made, and I hanged from the ceiling, and it was really fun. Like, it was a last-minute decision to interconnect all these things in string. They had all already been wrapped, but this idea of, like, webbing in the gallery was, the faculty actually asked me, like, what doesn't feel done yet? And I was like, I want to wrap everything in string and, like, interconnect it. And I knew that was going to be a big task on my part, under 48 hours away from my actual show. But I decided to do it because it felt important to this idea that, like, not only is this my identity, but nature, and that we are all connected as, like, one in this world. So I went forth with it and connected all these things. And this piece especially, like, feels important to me because it was one of the only ones that I made that was bigger. And when I made it, I put a little bit of alphabet that I developed onto it. I actually have some tattoos on my back that are in this alphabet, and I put happy stick on it. So whenever I look at it, it feels like a happy stick to me. It comforts me and makes me feel better about, like, everything that I'm doing. So, like, in my alphabet that I created, that's what it says. And I really love the way it is, like, hanging from the ceiling area. You know, a lot of the pieces I make feel like micro ecosystems, and some feel larger. This is one of the ones that feels larger. Instead of being this small example of the environment, I see almost like a full landscape in this piece. I had a lot of interest in that webbing and string running across it, which was actually what eventually inspired the string that connected the whole gallery together. You could call this piece a monolith or a pillar. Either way, it reminds me back to, in the Romantic era, the sublime, and creating something that instills, like, awe on the viewer beyond like the rational, and something that is more emotional. And, like, when I look at this piece having that lightning type thing, like, striking through it with this glowing color, and the patterns in the ceramic pieces that are drilled into it that also line up with other pieces in the gallery. There's something in it that feels, this piece probably feels the most familiar to me. It feels like a part of me in ways that the other pieces don't, so it's probably my favorite. But there's something, like, special about this, that it is connecting to that sense of the mystical, the wonder in the world, and like something magical that's beyond rational thought, even though it's a part of nature. I put on this piece an animal face on one side and a human resemblant face on the other side. And I think this is really important to like think about, that we are both animal and human, but on top of the piece is probably what is more important to it is I had a Rick Parsons assignment where we were supposed to go out into the woods for 3 hours and then create something in the woods. And I ended up making this shrine of sorts where I made myself meditate for an hour, and then I decided what I was going to construct in the woods, and I ended up deciding to construct a shrine that honored nature. And when I did that, it was really interesting thinking about, like, I created these rock walls that went around this little clearing I made, and like, why does there need to be walls to show this area that is sacred, that is important, versus the exterior that is nature as a whole? And it was bizarre to me that my brain needed this separate thing that was the important area versus the rest that was also important. So I collected materials from around that area, every different species I could find, and I bound it into a bouquet of sorts, which is what is sitting on top of that table. Here's another piece I made. This is the only 2D piece I have. I actually found it's originally cardboard, and I found it in the trash by like the mailroom. But it made me think of like honeycomb and a map of sorts, and it speaks to this larger picture of like what we are in this bigger ecosystem that we live in. I'll leave you guys with one last piece. Ooh, I hope this loads. Hold on. Maybe. I only blink a few times, so I can't tell if it's playing. Staring right at you guys. Yeah, it looks like it's... Did it blink? No. It blinked on my screen, so I don't know. Yeah, I can't tell. Whatever, if it's not gonna load, that's okay. It's the projection that's in the area. And this is actually a projection of, like, as you can see, the box that's like under it on the pedestal. And I used this broken mirror that I had, like, thinking about this like idea that, like, when I collect things and I put material into the box, which you would see if it was loading, sorry. But when I was putting material into the box that I had collected, I was thinking about, like, this idea of, like, that material, in a sense, is representing the beauty that I find in nature, that I find in the world around me, which is also a reflection of, like, who I am. Even though it's these pieces, these shards of self, this is what I find important, and it goes back to that idea of, like, the cabinets of curiosity, where everybody's going to have a different one because people are collecting different material from the world around them. And I would just like to, like, leave you guys with this idea of whether it be a physical material or what you are collecting emotionally in your daily lives. Like, it is important to collect and be curious and visually create what you are and what you feel is you in the world, because we are all interested in different things and find different things beautiful, and there is no standard to that. So whatever you put in your box, whatever you collect within you, is just as sacred, just as important to whatever anybody else is collecting. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm trying to change it to the next slide. I know, I'm trying.
You work on this, and at this point you can ask Nikki some questions
Yeah.
like I do sometimes.
Yes.
Let me see if I can put this into a question.
Yeah.
Less than a statement. But it seems like a lot of the work in there is about adornment. You talked about you dress like your work. And it's very interesting when you're talking about animals and the environment, that there's not too many things that are animals that self-adorn. Humans are one of those animals. There's a few other animals that actually adorn themselves. Can you see the connection of self-adornment or adorning the word and romanticism? Is there a connection between that break or shift in culture? Was self-adorning always there or present? Was this something new from 18th century present? I've seen your journal.
Yeah.
You thought about it.
I mean, there's a lot of different angles to come at that question from. I would say that obviously adornment, as far as humans goes, has always gone back in history to show class, to show wealth, to show something that makes you higher than others. But from an animal perspective, you have birds, you have creatures that do flashy dances, that have vibrant colors, that have this beauty in them that other animals are perceiving as important, and that is what continues on that species, because they're, if you think about like Darwin's survival of the fittest, you're choosing these creatures that have qualities that are higher than other qualities, whatever that is. But as far as adornment goes in romanticism, I think it's important to think about, we have all these factories, all these things that are constructing new materials, new things we haven't seen before, but everybody is going back to the environment, trying to connect with things they connect with in the past, because progress doesn't make progress for everybody. It might mean progress for the wealthy, it might mean progress in the sense of like science, but there is still impoverished, there is still hurt, but what is still there is the spirit of being a part of the environment, of being a soul in the world that is connected to everything else, which is, I think, where romanticism sits. So I can't completely answer, adorning myself and being something that matches my things, but I can say that, like, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about what feels like I fit into nature, what feels like something that I would feel a sense of power, a sense of wonder wearing in the forest if I was there and I chose to wear what I decided would be that for me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but with that. Cool. Julia? I'll start with the last part of that. I made a rule for myself in the show that anything that I collected, I was not cutting off of trees. I was not breaking off of like bigger boulders. Everything I found was on the ground, either washed up on the shore or like already on the dirt. And any furs, pelts, things that are fuzzy in there was either found in the thrift store and had already been cultivated, whether in a humane way or not. It had already been used. And then the all the fluffy cream fur was alpaca wool that had just been churned off of the creatures. But what was the other part of that question? When you consider it finished, yeah. And what, did it still have potential after it's finished? Yeah, the material's worth is little to none. I find the worth more in the collaboration, in the interaction between what I am doing to it and itself as a whole. I don't pick pieces that look like other pieces in the woods. I try to find things that are gnarled or twisting in a way that doesn't match up with the rest of the environment in that area. As far as when it's done, that's a tricky question to ask, because I have ones that I've put in less time into and I have ones that I've put in more time to, and it really depends on the piece itself. There's some kind of language that is speaking to me in them, and when the emotions have been thought through and I put it in the oven, I bake the clay, I seal that, and then it is wrapped, it feels done to me, and I don't know when that sealing happens. It is very innate to each piece, but I kind of just go off instinct with that, and I don't have a clear-cut answer to that. It really depends on each piece individually. Anna?
You're talking about your process and kind of these objects, you're finding your connection with nature through making these objects. I guess my question is, and comment, obviously you're putting energy and time into these objects. What happens to these objects after you're done with them? Do they return to nature, or do they become part of a collection, or what is your idea behind that?
I spoke about a little bit in my show, but I do find a fascination in collecting things and being able to use it as a visual representation of who I am. Because whenever I'm questioning who that is, because it is constantly transforming, what I can ground myself back to is the fact that I believe in the things that I'm collecting, that I know that those things are visually drawn to me, and that's a really hard thing to verbally construct a context around, because it is very animal instinctual thing to collect these things. But I definitely find a place for them in my home. Being able to look at them every day, they're very comforting to me. I find a lot of joy in looking at them. So I would love to put them on my wall and be able to like observe them. And I don't know like as far as art goes and continuing on with my art practice where those pieces are gonna go. But for now, they are going in my room. Yeah.
Okay, so you said that you wrote like active on that one page, and like immediately when I saw it, I was like, wow, that was like some wiki stuff on there. Like I gotta know what this is. But I'm curious because you said that you created your own like alphabet.
Yeah.
So you created your own like language basically. Was there any like inspiration behind that? Like were you just like I want to do this, or like did it come from somewhere? I guess.
So, like creating my own alphabet, it isn't a language itself. It can represent, each symbol represents a noise. So instead of it being like an alphabet itself, it is something you can translate into from other languages into that alphabet. I made it originally because I really wanted a tattoo with one of my yoga mantras down my spine, but the English alphabet is ugly. I don't know how else to say that. I don't like what it looks like. I don't want to appropriate another language and using their alphabet when I can't read it. That seems silly. So I ended up just kind of constructing my own, and I've been using it a lot in my writing, paintings, and putting it on a few of like the things I constructed for this because they're symbols I created, so they feel closer to me than the English alphabet does because it is something I designed. But I did accidentally use some Norse runes that I did not intentionally mean to use. So I will note that there are a few symbols that are used in other cultures, and I don't know. It's almost more interesting to me because of that, but I didn't do it intentionally. Julia.
This is probably a hard question, but what's next? What's your next goal?
I would love to do more with art. I want to do more with art. I need a break. This has been a crazy semester. It's been cut short. I'm exhausted. I have put all my heart and energy into this show. So I would like to take some time off. I'd like to go to Burning Man. It lines up with our school schedule, so I haven't been able to the whole time I've been here. But I'd like to do some things for myself and then go to grad school at some point. Beyond that, I'm not sure, but I know I'm always going to be making things because it is the only thing that settles my restless mind. So, but no matter what, I'll probably be making things. Rick?
I appreciate the depth of conversations. There are things that we've been together for 4 years. There are things that you take tonight that I haven't heard before. The lack of passion for art history and the ability to
I know like Mary Kenny isn't here today, but I know you're online somewhere. And I'm just like, I'm so thankful to you and Sherry, even though you guys weren't here this semester, and it means so much to me, all of you guys helping me with my work throughout this crazy semester and before that. So thank you guys all for that. Thank you to my parents for supporting me out here. It means a lot to me that you guys believe in my dreams and being out here, even though we're so far away. Thank you to all the other BFA students that have done so many critiques, Mapper, all of these overwhelming things that I know are so emotional and overwhelming to all of us, and all of us growing together as artists. But thank you guys for all showing up.